Look who fell for the old fake Joker gag. That's the thing, I can't really do a Joker laugh. I can do a decent Green Goblin laugh, the hello my dear. That I can do. I can't really do like a proper can't do a Joker laugh. Okay, before I tell you all my spoilery thoughts on Joker, I just want to say I love Batman, and I'm surprised I don't talk about Batman enough on this channel. I mean, I talk about what? Batman v Superman, how I'd redo the Batman trilogy, and I think that's the only Batman thing I've done on this channel, but yeah, I love Batman, and I love his Rose Gallery, especially the Joker. The Joker is the best, he's my favorite Batman villain, just so good. My favorite Joker is Mark Hamill. Heath Ledger is great, but he's just not my Joker. For me, when I think of the Joker, I think of either the Arkhamverse or I think of Batman the Animated Series, which is just such a great show. It genuinely is. I mean, for a kid's cartoon, it's just so deep and so complex. I mean, seriously, like half of the stuff that's on there, I'm like, whoa, kids are watching this? But yeah, as I just said, Mark Hamill is my favorite Joker, so I'm kind of a bit biased, so whenever a Joker isn't exactly or more or less along the same lines as Mark Hamill's Joker, it's just a bit... It just doesn't feel like the Joker to me. I mean, Heath Ledger's Joker is great, it's a great character, it just isn't my Joker. I mean, seriously, Mark Hamill's voice is just so iconic. Look who fell for the old fake Joker gag. I mean, it's so good. It's so iconic as well. I mean, Mark Hamill's Joker, just so good. But enough of all this Joker preamble, let's just talk about the movie, shall we? So, we finally have the somewhat controversial, I mean, I don't know why it's controversial, it's a movie, right? This movie shouldn't be inciting violence. I'm just gonna say this now. Like, it shouldn't be. It's a movie. It's something that should get us thinking, but we shouldn't enact violence. I mean, that's just going against the core message of the movie, I feel. But yes, this movie is somewhat controversial. But yes, we now have Joker, starring Joaquin Phoenix and directed by Todd Phillips. And honestly, this movie is very good. It's not very good, actually, it's great. It's so good. I mean, the one thing that is constant throughout this movie, and the one thing that really propels this movie forward, is Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker. He is phenomenal. As an interpretation or an alternate version of how the Joker became the Joker, this movie works really well, especially since I don't really like origins for my Joker. I mean, yeah, the Vat of Acid's pretty cool, but I mean, honestly, when I think of Joker, I do like the fact that he isn't a character with a defined origin. He prefers it to be multiple choice, as he says in The Killing Joke. But in regards to this film, the character of Arthur Fleck is a very fascinating character. I mean, he suffers from mental illness and these negative thoughts. He has this chronic laughing disease where he just can't stop laughing, even if he doesn't find a situation to be funny. And the fact that that's based on a real disease, and the film uses it as a way to organically introduce the Joker's hysterical laugh was just fascinating, and it's just such a good idea. Like, the fact that it's physically painful for him to laugh is just so cool. I mean, it's just such a little great character detail, and just, I loved it. Joaquin Phoenix's performance in this movie is simply phenomenal. It's excellent. He really needs to be nominated, and probably should win the Oscar for Best Actor, because honestly, the performance is stellar. It's so good. Just everything from his line delivery to his physicality in the role, it's just amazing. And when it comes to physicality, Joaquin Phoenix just nails the physicality of the Joker. I mean, if he wasn't playing this version of the Joker and was instead playing a more comic book accurate version of the Joker, he'd absolutely nail it. It's just, his performance is just so good. But speaking of his physicality, there's a little thing they add to this version of the Joker, that he dances, and I really like the fact that he dances. The way the film uses dance to tell a story of the character of Arthur Fleck is simply genius. At first, once he kills the 3 Wall Street guys, he runs into this abandoned toilet, and he starts doing this sort of stiff and slow and controlled and calming waltz, as if, to steady his mind. But, as the film continues and he devolves into insanity, he sort of, like, becomes more looser, more free, as if, like, he's finally becoming his true self, and it's just so good. And story is something that this movie is really all about. It's a character study about this one man devolving into madness and becoming a Joker-like character, and the film uses every single facet of filmmaking to tell this one story, especially the cinematography. The cinematography for this movie is gorgeous. I love it so much. From the use of its color to the visual storytelling, it's just so good. And it's something that a lot of superhero movies have really just neglected. I mean, just the colors and the visual storytelling in the cinematography is just so good. And I feel like it's something that modern day superhero movies are starting to neglect. Like, the more movies Marvel seems to be pumping out, the less they seem to be focused on the craft of filmmaking and its utensils. Like, the cinematography, it's not always there to tell the story. Don't get me wrong, the MCU does sometimes use visual storytelling very effectively. For example, in Avengers Endgame, once Thor chops off Thanos' head at the beginning, and then he walks out of focus, it obviously creates a distance between us, the audience, and Thor, and it also shows Thor's mindscape of, how unclear he feels, and how distant and alone he feels after killing Thanos and failing to stop him from snapping half the universe. That's good visual storytelling. It's just a shame that a lot of the movies afterwards don't really seem to, use its cinematography to tell a story. But not in Joker. In Joker, I feel like that's like the main aim of its cinematography, is to tell the story visually. Key example of this is the representation of the staircase. We see Arthur Fleck climb this staircase, and it's very laborious, very draining, and very long-winded. And the film is clearly using it as a metaphor for mental health. How he's trying so hard to stay in a clear headspace. But as the film goes on and he devolves into this Joker-like character, he starts waltzing down the staircase, his descent into madness, if you will, and he's more loose, more free, carefree. It's so good. It's this kind of visual storytelling that I haven't really seen in a lot of superhero movies since, Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. Just that visual storytelling, I love it, and I wish that more movies would actually, do it. Now, the director Todd Phillips basically said that this movie isn't really inspired by many comic books, and for the most part, I would agree. I mean, there is a bit of Killing Joke in it. I mean, the idea that the Joker, before he is the Joker, is a failed comedian is in the movie. It's just that this film uses it in a different way. Instead of, following one specific comic book story, it tells its own story, and it takes leeway with the source material, and honestly, I think the film really benefits from it. This movie has so many just big moments, and just they're so effective. You got the reveal that Thomas Wayne is actually the father of Arthur Fleck, which isn't actually true, as we find out that his mother lied completely and is psychotically deranged. She believed that Thomas Wayne was the father of Arthur Fleck, but that's not true. In fact, Arthur was adopted by her and abused by her boyfriend. It's these little twists and turns in the movie that make you go, ooh, it keeps you on edge. I mean, I actually personally wouldn't have minded for this version of the Joker to be related to Bruce Wayne, because I think then, obviously, if this Bruce Wayne grew up to become Batman and he fought this version of the Joker, it'd be quite interesting, you'd have that parallel of brother v brother. Now, although the film doesn't actually do that, we do get a pretty great scene of Arthur Fleck going to Wayne Manor and talking to young Bruce Wayne. He's like sticking his fingers in his mouth and trying to make him smile. It's just so interesting. And then obviously once Arthur Fleck finds out that his mother is psychotically deranged and that she's been lying to him this whole life, it just becomes really dark. I mean, he's sitting in her hospital bedroom just like, Mum, I used to think that my life was a tragedy. In fact, it's a comedy. And he just suffocates her. Like, oh my God. Like, it's so dark and just like, yo, this movie it's going there. It's going these places. And then you've got the reveal of Zazie Beetz' character. I don't remember her character's name. That's one thing I think this film doesn't really do a great job of, and that's really establishing each character's name. But her character, the idea that her and Arthur Fleck were in a relationship throughout the whole movie, until this one bit where he walks into her apartment, he's like all like creepy and like hunching over like the coffee table. She walks in and is just like, hey, you're Arthur, right? You live across the hall? And she doesn't know him at all, and the fact that throughout the whole movie, every scene that they've been in together is just been him, just imagining them together was just, it's such a good and just shocking twist. It's so good. And just after this is when he just completely snaps and becomes the Joker, and oh my God. The scene where he kills the guy who gave him the gun that he used to kill the 3 Wall Street guys was just such an amazing scene. I mean, that's when I went, oh yeah, he's become the Joker. The scene itself felt very Joker-like. I mean, the scene itself just has this really sort of sick, twisted sense of humor, and I love it. I honestly just love that part in the scene where he lets the other guy go. It just felt so Joker-like. You didn't actually know if he actually was going to let him leave the apartment. It was just so sick and twisted, and it was just great. But I do feel like there was one thing that could have improved that scene, and that is, once he killed the guy, I wish that instead of just him, just laying there exhausted, I wish he just burst out into this hysteric, manic, and morbid Joker laugh. For me, that would have just felt more akin to something like Mark Hamill's Joker. But obviously, for the scene, it works. I just wish that they did include him hysterically laughing, because it just would have felt more Joker-like. Then we get to the climax of the movie where he essentially is now the Joker. And it's very good. The talk show scene between him and Robert De Niro's character was just so good, because you had no idea what he was going to do. Because, prior we'd seen him rehearse the scene, and it seemed like he was going to commit suicide on the show. But then obviously as he sits there and he's listening to Robert De Niro basically just trash talk him, we sort of see him sort of change, but you don't know that he's changing. You don't actually know what the plan is, and it's just so good. I especially love the morbid humor when he basically just shoots Robert De Niro, and he does a little Heath Ledger style talking to the camera like, on this night people will die. But then the film does this comedic cut to the standby screen, and it's honestly funny. Like, it felt very much in vein of the character of the Joker. But I do have a tiny little problem with that scene, and that is just the social commentary in the dialogue just feels way too ham-fisted and forced. There's just something about it that doesn't feel as sharp or as smart or as sophisticated as the writing in the rest of the film. I like that the film does call out, hey, we as a society do tend to ignore and neglect and sometimes push aside people with mental illnesses, but there's something about the dialogue and the exchange, it felt inorganic. But the ending scene is actually very good. Joker gets caught by the police only to be set free by the rebellion that he has now caused. He's got his message out there, people are now dressing like clowns, and they're rebelling against society. A really haunting image that I just adored was, him basically getting up on the car and doing his little dance, and then, his nose bleeding, and then he starts, taking the blood and, forcing it into a smile. It was so good. But then a little interesting thing happens in this scene, which is we see the death of the Waynes, and I feel like I didn't need to see them actually get shot. I didn't need it, and I don't think it was done as well as it was done in Batman v Superman, because honestly, I'm a bit burnt out on seeing the Waynes die a little bit. It's a little bit different to the Uncle Ben situation, because I honestly love seeing Uncle Ben get shot, because the origin to Spider-Man is so essential to the character. We need to know what kind of man Ben Parker was, and we need to see how Peter reacts to Ben's death. That stuff, for me, in terms of Spider-Man lore, is very important. With Batman, we really just need to imply that his parents died and that he either got the criminal or he didn't get the criminal. And in all honesty, I feel like the movie just didn't need to do it. I think it could have implied it, but it didn't need to be shown. Especially since I love the death of the Wayne sequence in Batman v Superman. It's just so stylish and cinematic, is visually stunning. I mean, nothing will top it, and I think that this movie tried to do that, but it just didn't work for me. Now, although I said I love the ending to the film, I don't love the actual ending scene, which is him in the psychiatric hospital, basically, running around being chased by doctors. I felt like that part was just a little bit superfluous. I kind of wish that it ended to when, he's standing on the police car, everyone's cheering, like, yeah, Joker, 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 and it fades to black. Or I think the film should have ended when, he's talking to the psychiatrist at the end, and, he's laughing uncontrollably, and she's like, what's funny? And he's just like, nothing. It's just a joke I found funny, and you wouldn't, get it. And it cuts to, the death of the Waynes. I think it should have ended there. It would have been more impactful. I think that ending scene of, him just, running across the halls with, the bloody footprints didn't really do it for me. I will say one thing that I would have done to improve this movie would have mainly have just been to have the Joker become the clown prince of crime, because in this film he becomes more of a symbol of anarchy and chaos like the Joker is, but I feel like he didn't become the prince of crime. He didn't set up his own mob boss, and I think that if that was part of the film, it would have been quite good. Maybe they'll do it in a sequel, but I doubt we're going to get a sequel for this film, mainly because Joaquin Phoenix doesn't want to sign a multi-picture deal, and he's very picky about the films he picks. I mean, the reason why he wasn't the MCU Doctor Strange was because he didn't want to sign a multi-picture contract. But who knows? I mean, I honestly would really like to see a sequel to this film, especially if you brought in Batman. I'd love to see this Batman fight this Joker, especially since by the time Bruce Wayne becomes Batman, around about the age of 25, 29, 27, 30, this Joker would be quite old. I think that would be really fascinating, and obviously I feel like a way you would end that movie is have, Batman and the Joker fight throughout that movie, and, have the Joker die at the end. I think it'd be very quite interesting. But yeah, honestly, Joker is really good. It's beautiful, the soundtrack and the score is just amazing, cinematography is beautiful, Joaquin Phoenix is astonishing in this movie, and It's just a very good movie. But yeah, what did you guys think of Joker? Leave me a comment down there. Like and subscribe and all the good stuff. Hit the notification bell down there as well. My social media links are also down in the description, and I have a second channel where I make short films. I just released a new one quite recently, so if you check that out, that'd be very much appreciated. And until we meet again, I'll see you guys next time.